Welcome back. It is called the Celery Fields, and it's a cherished recreation area with hiking trails, kayaking, and bird watching. It is a rare commodity here on the Suncoast, which is why activists protested plans to build a 60,000 square foot restaurant depot nearby. The rezoning application was withdrawn this week, but another project for a recycling facility is still moving forward. It needs the okay from the county commissioners, but as we just reported, 4 of the 5 commissioners received regular campaign contributions from the developer. And joining us for more is Robert Wright, Conservation Chair of the Sarasota Audubon Society, CATHY ANTUNES, host of The Detail on WSLR Radio, and former County Commissioner John THAXTON, who is now the Senior Vice President of Community Investment for the Gulf Coast Community Foundation. Please note we invited the City County Commissioners to be on tonight's show or to send a surrogate. They turned us down, and that is unfortunate. And John, I want to begin with you, but I also want to make note of the pink in your hair, and there's a good explanation for that.
We have a breast cancer survivor in our office who is celebrating 5 years of cancer-free. So the senior leadership team of Gulf Coast wanted to show support and solidarity, so we joined her in putting pink streaks in our hair.
Congratulations, and congratulations out there. We're also, glad for continued health. John, we invited you on the show tonight because, obviously people are going to be watching this broadcast and see the continual contributions to the commissioners, and they're going to be sitting back in their chairs and say, well, you know what, very few development projects are voted down in Sarasota County, and they're wondering if there's going to be a link between the vote and campaign contributions. You face that a lot over the years. You tell me.
Well, I think the perception is pretty much unavoidable. People are going to believe that the money is influencing the votes. And you would have to ask commissioners individually if that's the case.
Which we tried.
I understand, because we're all individuals and we all have different standards and we all have different belief systems, but there could be a linkage in that the candidate is supporting, as Gabbert said, a business-minded person who is likely to vote their way even without a campaign contribution, and they want to make sure that the person stays in office and stays in power to promote their interests as a philosophical perspective, which is completely different than having some sort of a quid pro quo.
And Kathy, that does make sense. I mean, it does happen all the time. One thing doesn't necessarily mean another, and as we said a number of times, there's nothing illegal that we're talking about here.
Right. Well, that's actually, I think, part of the problem. Mr. Gabbert, in addition to the 17 grand that your reporter, that was great information, he also has contributed $10,000 to the local PAC Making a Better Tomorrow, which is administered by Eric Robinson, who is our local PAC manager. But I don't even think this is a good...
Where did you get that information from?
The Division of Elections website in the state of Florida. You can find it there. But I would really challenge the notion that this is smart from a business perspective. I think it's smart for Mr. Gabbert, for his business perhaps, but for the surrounding area, for ecotourism, it's an absolute loser from a business perspective. Ecotourism is a big draw, and the Celery Fields is a big part of that.
Robert, you're located. The Audubon Society is located at the Celery Field, so I know that this is an issue that is incredibly close to your heart, and you heard from the local homeowners who are not supportive of this. When it just comes to the campaign contributions, what are your thoughts when you see stories like this?
Well, I mean, they're a little bit troubling because you would like to think that this is going to be a fair presentation of information to the board, and that they're going to hear from the literally thousands of people who are opposed to this project, and then they're going to hear from the one individual who will benefit from the project. And you're hoping that, again, all things being fair, that the citizens of Sarasota County en masse would provide more input to stop the project where it is now and then move into some kind of negotiation with all the stakeholders, not just people who are interested in buying the property.
John, you heard the homeowner in Kate's story who says, hey, listen, I mean, we see the contributions. We're not fools. We wouldn't be surprised if this project goes through. There are, correct me if I'm wrong, plenty of times that you have gotten contributions from some of the biggest developers in our area and voted against them?
Regularly. I receive numerous contributions from all the large developers in Sarasota. You would recognize their names. If you want to go on the supervisor's website, you can find them. And I regularly voted against their projects when I felt they did not meet the merits of the law. And the merits of the law are comparing the rezone application to those goals, objectives, and policies in the comprehensive plan. And I would counsel the groups that are opposing it not to base their assumptions and their recommendations based upon the number of people that show up at a public hearing or what the people want, because in a land use hearing, what the people want is of no regard. As a matter of fact, you cannot even make a decision based upon popularity. You have to make it based upon the consistency of the application with the policies in the plan.
Have you ever been pressured by a contributor to vote their way?
I wouldn't call it pressure. I have had many times where a contributor would have a petition, and prior to the actual filing of the petition, they would like to talk to me about it. I typically avoided those conversations because I didn't like the perception that it showed. So I've never been pressured. No.
Have you ever had a consequence for voting against a contributor?
Not that I know of.
You know, Kathy, this is no different than what happens in the state legislature or in Congress, where our members of Congress, our state representatives, get a lot of money from groups and organizations which want them to vote their way. Why is this any different?
Well, I think it's important to look at the process that's happened here. Last spring, the county put out an invitation to negotiate, soliciting bids for this land. There were 2 parcels, restaurant depots left. The Audubon Society, certainly an interested party, didn't know these parcels were for sale. They only got 1 bid each. Mr. Gabbert's bid for the southwest parcel and Restaurant Depot's bid. If you're talking about a pro-business culture and you're only getting 1 bid and you're accepting it, that is a ridiculous proposition to try to sell the public that this is in any way pro-business or fair. It looks like the fix is in. And when it looks like a duck and walks like a duck, you got to figure you're dealing with that.
I'd like to follow up on that if I could, because I think one of the things that we're missing here in the big picture is the fact that the land that we're talking about is currently owned by Sarasota County.
Exactly.
It's not a taking or preventing someone from using their land. And when I say it's owned by Sarasota County, that means you own it, and I own it, and everybody at this table owns it, and everybody in Sarasota County owns it. So what I'm driving at here is the idea that when you look at the land being placed on the surplus land list to begin with, there was not adequate notification to anyone to do that.
I got it, John.
And we have less than a minute left, but when did you learn about the proposed sale of
We learned about the proposed sale when a neighborhood person alerted us to a neighborhood workshop talking about the fact that a bid had been accepted by the county pending rezoning.
We're running out of time in this segment, but what would you have done if you learned about it earlier?
If we had learned about it earlier, we would have worked with the county before any bids were taken in order to get the lands taken off the surplus lands list.
And this is critical. This cap hasn't been updated in 25 years.
All right, we will pick up this conversation in just a moment. We are just getting started. We'll return right after this break. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are discussing a proposal to build a recycling facility near the celery fields in Sarasota. We're also talking about the implications of more than $17,000 in campaign contributions made by the applicant of the project of 4 county commissioners. Our guests tonight are Robert Wright of the Sarasota Audubon Society, CATHY ANTUNES, host of The Detail on WSLR Radio, and former County Commissioner John Thaxton. We will also want to note, once again, we invited the county commissioners to join us tonight. They turned down our request. And Robert, let me begin with you again, because you know, the county considers this excess land, but
Correct.
You believe this is really part of the celery fields project.
Yes, I do. And one of the things I have to say right up front is the idea that to be surplus land, it has to be considered as not having a viable use to the citizens of Sarasota County. Now, this is a document which is put out by Sarasota County, and there's others also that specifically list this land that we're talking about as part of the Celery Fields Preserve. As you can see, those 4 quads are the same color as the rest of it here. And when you tally up the acreage that they're talking about,
Actually,
it includes...
Why don't you, just try to turn it a little bit that way
Sure.
as you speak.
That is what we're dealing with for the 4 properties here as the quad. And as I said, when you tally up the acreage of the preserve, the 400-some acres include these properties.
Right, and
so this is already part of the Celery Fields.
John, you were in office after the acquisition of this project, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Celery Fields, that area is a defined area, but the county had to purchase more land than was originally intended for the project.
It wasn't necessarily because it was a defined area. It's just that the property owner at the time would not sell the land that was absolutely necessary for the Celery Fields project to materialize without also purchasing these other parcels. And so that's how they came into county ownership. At the time, you got to remember, the county was considering, we purchased this with Stormwater Environmental Utilities Funds, which is an enterprise fund, which are non-fungible assets. But we were thinking, the county was thinking about putting ball fields, lighted ball fields on here. And some of us had more ecological interests, and some of the staff at the county at the time, a gentleman named Steve Swall, recognized that we could both save the homes from flooding and also make a tremendous wildlife park out of it.
Do you believe that there is any good argument against selling this property?
You know, I have not really studied the petition or kept up with it that much, and so I don't feel that I'm, you know, really capable of answering that question.
Is there a basis in the master plan, so to speak, to turn down this request?
Well, if there's no viable use in terms of a public interest, and the monies can be used to promote greater public good, then that would be the conditions that they would be sold under.
Kathy, you observe the county commission. You are known for doing so.
Right.
What do you see inside these commission meetings on this project and other projects like it?
Well, what I see, which is the overriding concern, is not walking a certain kind of talk, which is we're great at planning, we're on the cutting edge of best practices, and then the reality is when the rubber meets the road, that's not what happens. In this particular instance, this project is governed by a critical area plan, and that's what Mr. Gabbard now is asking for, a critical area plan change. This critical area plan, the whole purpose of one is to look at the bigger picture, is to do better development. It hasn't been updated since the 90s. It's been 25 years. So before anything were to happen, they should be updating that plan, and they're not.
Robert, put this in context, because this proposal is not going to affect the Celery Fields in terms of the kayaking, the hiking, the bird watching. What, in your opinion, is at stake here?
Well, when you think about it, the lands as they stand now, even though there's no habitat value on them at this moment in time, those properties are areas where birds and other critters go to forage, and then they return to the celery fields. Just like a lot of the things that live in the celery fields may live further somewhere else. But that is all part of the general habitat. If you build something on those vacant properties, what you're doing is you're pushing the land area available for the critters and the birds to live in further back, because they're going to withdraw even further away from the existing industrial area, because now you've increased the size of the industrial area. So consequently, having something there that either stays in its natural state or something that doesn't generate tons of truck traffic, which is one of the issues with Mr. Gabbard's project, is the fact that in order for him to be successful, he has to have in the neighborhood of about 100 trucks a day rolling through there. And a lot of that traffic is going to be coming through the celery fields. So the trucks themselves and all the debris they're carrying and everything else, not even taking into consideration his property itself,
but
has a major impact.
Isn't this part of the push and pull that we deal on the Suncoast and everywhere in general, that we love these areas, but we are a growing community and we need companies, you're saying no, that you know, we also create garbage and we need recycling, and
this isn't garbage.
Not in my backyard, but these kinds of facilities are needed.
There are a couple points. One is recycling is a characterization that works for Mr. Gabbard, but I believe the correct term would be an industrial waste processing plant. This isn't aluminum cans and bottles we're talking about. This is concrete, this is industrial waste. That has implications for the wildlife. The other thing is, who's defining the value of an area? I mean, if I want to build an industrial plant, I may not value ecotourism very much, but ecotourism is a huge driver of our economy, and the celery fields is part of that. It's nationally and internationally known. So the business interests, I would not call them that. I'd call them special interests who have bought seats at the table, they have their people in place, and those people are working for special interests.
John, the celery fields are beloved, but isn't it also true that the roads going to and from are already busy with commerce?
They are. Sure they are.
So,
Yeah,
so is this a matter of degree?
well, first off, I'm not going to comment on the petition because I can't. I haven't read it. I wouldn't comment even if I'd read it. I'd only comment after I've studied it.
You're a good lawyer.
What I would do is we have policies that are in the comprehensive plan that their specific purpose are to take these issues that we're talking about here tonight and weigh them. And that's what needs to be done. The community needs to look at those policies. They need to look at this land use. They need to look at the surrounding area, the critical area plan, if you would, and then make an assessment based on all of the facts.
We're going to go to final thoughts in a moment, but I would imagine that the points that you're all raising is that we would much be better off if the community in general were notified about the sale earlier and that the public debate about it got more exposure.
Exactly. In fact, you know, having worked for the county for many years myself, the normal way of doing business is when you're going to do a project that's going to impact stakeholders, people who are going to be have their livelihood or their businesses or something else affected by what you're thinking about doing. The first thing you do is notify as many stakeholders as you can, and in this case it would be all over the county, to come and find out what you're proposing, and then when you're proposing it, you get their input. Then you work out the details between you and come up with a good project.
All right, let's take a quick break. And when we return, we'll have final thoughts from our guests, plus what some of our viewers are saying about the GOP healthcare plans. Welcome back. What can we expect from the proposal for the recycling facility near the celery fields to receive approval? And what do we make of the campaign contributions from James Gabbard? Our guest join us right now for final thoughts. Robert, I'll go to you first. What do you make of what we're talking about tonight, and what do you hope that happens?
Well, as I said before, I have no idea from an impact of the contributions Mr. Gabbard has made. I really can't comment on that one way or the other. But what I can say is that the use of land for what he's proposing is totally incompatible with what we have there in the celery fields. And one of the requirements for changing that rezoning or the plan that we're talking about is the idea of compatibility. It has to be compatible. And as I've shown here, you don't get any more compatible than already being part of the celery fields.
Kathy, we reported tonight that the other project earmarked for that site, the restaurant depot, that was withdrawn this week. Partially, the developers say because of the community opposition to it. Is there any likeliness that the same thing would happen in regards to this part of the parcel?
Well, I can't speak to what Mr. Gabbard may or may not do. I would leave you with two thoughts. One is
because he did say to me that at public meetings that the public that came out was often rude, often not courteous to him as he was trying to make his point.
I wasn't at those meetings, so I can't speak to that.
Is that true?
There were people who were rude to him. But I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that they didn't receive adequate notification before any of this process took place.
But see, this is a tactic. In other words, when you have a weak case, what do? You shoot, you try to make it personal. Mr. Gabbard's case is very weak. He's the only bidder, so whatever the county did to notify people was wholly inadequate. When you only have one bid, that's a lousy business practice. That's very obvious.
So, John, what should we keep in mind?
Well, I can only say how I was influenced as a county commissioner, and I would encourage folks to at least assume this with the seated county commission. And it's not about the campaign contributions as much as it is their philosophies with regards to growth in Sarasota County and what do the policies direct them to do with this decision that they must make. And if we stick to that, I think the outcome could be a good one.
You know, here's the bottom line, folks. Elections matter.
They do.
Before we go, we want to share with you what some of our viewers are saying about last night's topic, the GOP plan to repeal and replace Obamacare. House Republicans will vote on the American Care Act tomorrow. While it eliminates the individual mandate of Obamacare, the Congressional Budget Office estimates as many as 24 million Americans could lose coverage under the act by 2018. It would also cut funding to Medicaid. Florida had more Obamacare signups than any other state in 2016. We asked what you think about the new plan, and Leslie Young writes, I'm 57, never could afford Obamacare, and I still have no health care. I can't afford it. Wish somebody would help me out. Seems I always fall through the cracks. Jeff Vermillion writes, regardless of the plan, health care is the driver behind the cost. You're not going to reduce insurance unless you create huge pools of customers to spread the cost. Everyone hates the Medicare for all mantra, but it's the most cost-effective way to reduce prices. And Augusto Perez writes, call it the Republican insurance plan or just use the initials RIP. If you'd like, I hear you laughing out there somewhere. If you'd like to join the conversation about tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/news@7. And FYI, want to watch past roundtable discussions? They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. Thanks to our guests for being here tonight. Robert Wright is the Conservation Chair of the Sarasota Audubon Society. CATHY ANTUNES hosts The Detail on WSLR Radio. And John Thaxton is a former Sarasota County Commissioner. He is now Senior Vice President of Community Investment at the Gulf Coast Community Foundation.